When I moved back to this old patch of land in Willow Creek, it felt like stepping into a memorial. Me dad's work boots still seemed to echo in the dirt, the apple trees stretching out like they were waiting for me to come home. 9 acres of orchard, a little wild after years of neglect since Pop passed, but those roots ran deep like they were holding on to something sacred. I just retired after 25 years in the marine scene, enough sand and chaos to last a lifetime, and all I wanted was the kind of peace you can only find in the rhythm of dawn, the smell of dew on the trees, the quiet cluck of chickens behind the barn. Willow Creek wasn't exactly the middle of nowhere, but it was close tucked against a fancy new neighborhood called Pine Ridge, full of retirees with too much money and families chasing that country vibe without knowing a lick about the land. Most of them were fine, waved politely, didn't bother me much, but then there was the HOA. See, my land, my orchard, it predated their cul-de-sacs by decades, built by my granddad in the 60s. But some zoning nonsense from the 90s slipped my northern fence just inside their territory. They called the dirt road to my barn shared access, which I didn't fight hell. I filled their potholes myself, even showed up to one of their potlucks with a pie. But I wasn't one of them, not with my muddy boots and my beat-up truck, and they made sure I felt it. Then came Lisa Caldwell. She rolled into Pine Ridge in a sleek black Mercedes convertible, hair like a shampoo commercial, sunglasses that probably cost more than my tractor. I first saw her one spring morning, cruising down the road past my barn, engine purring like it was mocking the quiet. She didn't wave, just gave my orchard a glance like it was her personal shortcut. A week later, I heard through the diner that she was some hotshot lawyer from the city, bought the biggest house on the block, the one with the fancy gate and a lawn that looked like it was mowed with nail clippers. Rumor was she'd once sued a neighbor for planting tulips that clashed with her aesthetic. I didn't think much of it, live and let live, right? Until I saw the tire tracks. They cut right through my orchard, deep ruts in the grass between my Cortland and Fuji trees. Broken branches, a busted irrigation pipe, and one young sapling leaning like it had been punched. I followed the tracks, heart sinking, and knew exactly who it was. Those fancy tires don't lie. I called the HOA, sent photos, figured they'd handle it. They didn't. A few days later, I caught her car speeding through again, kicking up dirt, not a care in the world. So I walked to her mansion, knocked on her door, ready to talk like adults. She answered in a silk robe, sipping something neon green, and before I could finish explaining, she cut me off. "Oh, honey, that little dirt path's the quickest way to my side of the neighborhood. Calm down. It's just grass." I told her it was my land, my trees, my livelihood. She laughed, waved me off like I was a kid whining about a scraped knee. "File a complaint with the HOA if you're so upset, Mr. Callahan." I did. Emailed them photos, maps, even quoted the county property code. Nothing. The HOA board, turns out, was half in Lisa's pocket. Her family had bankrolled their new community gazebo. So I put up signs, big ones, black letters, private property, no trespassing. By noon the next day, they were gone, posts snapped like toothpicks. That's when it hit me. This wasn't about a shortcut. This was about power, about her thinking she could roll over me because I wasn't one of her country club crowd. My orchard wasn't just land, it was my dad teaching me to prune branches, my kid learning to climb trees, my wife's laughter echoing through the rows before cancer took her. Lisa didn't just drive through my property. She drove through my life. I wasn't looking for a fight, not revenge. Not yet, just a way to make her stop. I remember my granddad's words, sitting on a stump years ago, sweat on his brow. "Jack, if you don't draw a line, folks will walk all over you." So I drew one literally. I called the county, checked the rules, and filed a permit for an erosion control trench, legal, clean, no questions asked. I spent a week digging, early mornings before the sun got me, 6 feet wide, for feet deep, sloping on one side, sharp on the other. I lined it with hay, covered it with planks and leaf netting so it blended into the orchard floor. It wasn't a trap. It was a boundary, one she'd have to respect or learn the hard way. That morning came quick, just after a light rain, the kind that makes the orchard smell like earth and memory. I was stacking crates when I heard that Mercedes purr, saw it tear through my rows like she owned them. I stood there, coffee mug in hand, watching her speed toward the trench. Part of me hoped she'd stop, see the signs I'd posted again, but deep down I knew better. The crack of wood, the thud of metal, and the no man scream. High-pitched, furious, like a cat thrown in a pond. I walked over, slow, boots sinking in the damp grass, and there it was, her shiny Mercedes, nose down in the trench, back wheels spinning uselessly, steam curling from the hood. Lisa was standing on the seat, heels digging into leather, one sunglass lens cracked, the other gone, waving her phone like it was a magic wand. You did this. This is assault, she shrieked, her face redder than my apples. I stayed calm, pulled the permit from my pocket. This is my land, Lisa. Legal trench, county approved, clearly marked. You were warned twice. She climbed out, stumbling in her heels, mud clinging to her ankles. Do you know who I am? I'll sue you into the ground. I just crossed my arms. You're Lisa Caldwell, and you're trespassing. Again. She called her lawyer, the sheriff, probably her hairdresser too, ranting about traps and attempted murder. Deputy Sarah Brooks showed up, a friend from way back who knew my family's history with this land. She read my permit, looked at the signs, the photos I'd saved, and turned to Lisa. Ma'am, this is private property. You got no business here. Lisa's jaw dropped, but she didn't argue not with Sarah's badge staring her down. You'd think that'd be the end of it, but Lisa wasn't one to back off. 2 days later, I got a certified letter from the HOA claiming my trench was an unsafe community hazard, threatening $200 a day, fines unless I filled it in. Never mind it was on my land, fully permitted. I called my buddy Mike, a lawyer from my Marine days, and he laughed so hard he nearly choked. They're bluffing, Jack. Send him the permit, the sheriff's report, and tell him to pound sand. I did, laminated 10 copies of the permit, staked them around the trench with new signs. Private land, legal trench, trespass at your own risk. The HOA didn't stop fines for my unsightly barn, complaints about my fence, even a note about my dogs barking. Then they went too far. A letter to my daughter, Ellie, at her college apartment, hinting I was disrupting community harmony. That's when I knew this wasn't just about lease-sate, was the HOA flexing, protecting one of their own. I wasn't backing down. I applied for a permit to host a fall apple-picking festival, legal and open to the public. Flyers went up, families showed up, kids ran through the rows, and the local paper ran a story. Veteran revives family orchard. Lisa watched from her fancy gate, fuming, but the neighborhood started to shift. People saw her for what she was, a bully with a checkbook. Then came her lawsuit, $250,000 for her car, emotional distress, even reputational damage. Mike filed a counterclaim trespassing, vandalism, harassment, and we subpoenaed the HOA's emails. Turns out, Lisa and the board president, Greg Tanner, had been plotting to deal with me for months. The real turning point came at a city council meeting. I stood up, no script, just me, a man who'd fought for his country and now for his land. I told them about the orchard, my family, the tire tracks, the threats, the letter to my kid. Neighbors stood with me, old Mrs. Carter, who'd been fined for her garden gnome. Tim, the tow truck guy who pulled Lisa's car out. Even Sarah, off duty, nodding from the back. The council voted to boot Lisa from the HOA and audit the board. That night, I slept like I hadn't in months. Lisa left town a week Laterno fanfare, just a for sale sign and a quiet driveway. The HOA softened. New folks took over, and the orchard? It became more than mine again. Neighbors helped with the harvest. Kids learned to pick apples, and that trench painted bright with wildflowers around. It turned into a story folks told with a grin. That's where Lisa learned to read signs, they'd say, laughing. Ellie came home for Thanksgiving, and we stood on the porch, coffee in hand, watching the fog curl over the trees. You didn't just save the orchard, Dad, she said. You showed him who we are. I smiled, sipped my coffee. Yeah, kid, and we're still here. So what do you think? Was I right to dig that trench, to draw that line? Or did I go too far? Drop a comment. Tell me your stories ever had to stand up to a bully like Lisa or an HOA gone wild. Let's talk about it.